We are in an information war, and we are losing that war.
And they are indeed losing the information war thanks to the internet. Now, we have seen a crackdown on all sorts of sites reporting truthful news on everything from GMOs to exposing the fact that dead photos of children are used to push an agenda. Well, now Obama's war on the free press escalates. Now, a source has told Alex Jones yesterday that the Obama White House has directed an FBI task force to put Alex Jones and the InfoWars operation under surveillance in anticipation of a potential raid. Now, Jones was first contacted about a year ago by a source within the FBI who informed him that InfoWars was being kept under close surveillance by the federal government. Well, now a different source is saying that meetings have already taken place where FBI agents have openly expressed their confidence that they will find something with which to go after Alex Jones, even if it means framing him. Now, in light of the Lois Lerner scandal, where conservative groups were deliberately targeted by the IRS, the feds are keen to not make this process look like a political persecution, so they're likely to have it spearheaded by the Federal Trade Commission and be related to the InfoWars sale of health supplements. This is according to Alex Jones. Now, coming up, Alex Jones is going to be breaking this story down in its entirety, but this type of thing happens a lot. We've seen it happen with Dinesh D'Souza. Back in 2007, the Dallas Mavericks' Mark Cuban was also threatened by the SEC for his involvement in a controversial political documentary that would have been embarrassing for the White House. So these agencies are used as government goons to push this agenda. And let's face it, Obama is sick and tired of InfoWars. We've been exposing his false flags left and right, and we have seen his dogs coming after us, like Mark Zuckerberg. Now, you'll recall that Zuckerberg was taking these big-time meetings at the White House after it was determined that Facebook would be controlling the internet and aggregating the news that you are able to read. We've seen Facebook censoring articles that talk about GMOs and Monsanto. And again, they've censored another one of our articles. This was when we referenced the Pope kid and pointed out how it was a staged PR stunt to promote illegal immigration. Well, of course, Facebook didn't want that because Zuckerberg has been super pro amnesty because he wants to bring in all these low-paid workers. So as the story went, little Sophie Cruz slipped past security to approach the Pope Mobile to not only give the Pope a T-shirt, but to deliver him a handwritten letter which advocates amnesty for illegals. Now, the T-shirt that Cruz gave him read, "Pope, rescue DAPA so the legalization would be your blessing." So it was just this heartwarming story, and of course, that's exactly the way that the mainstream media spun this. Oh, this cute little girl, how did she get past security? Oh, and she just so happened to have a present to give the Pope. Well, turns out that it was a PR stunt. Once again, we called it before it had a chance to get out there. And this is the kind of thing that the president does not like. He doesn't like it when we call him out on his little PR stunts to push his agenda. Now, this is coming out of the AP. Immigration group planned girls' Pope encounter for a year. Now, the AP is reporting that Sophie Cruz's encounter with the Pope during a parade this week looked to be one of those spontaneous, once-in-a-lifetime moments Francis has become known for. That's according to, anyone who is not half awake. It was just spontaneous. We called it right away. But they go on. For 5-year-old Sophie, the chance to wrap her arm around the Pope's neck as he offered a hug, kiss, and a blessing unfolded as perfectly as it was scripted by members of a coalition of Los Angeles-based immigration rights groups. They had been planning this for nearly a year, prepping the young girl to make a dash for the Pope Mobile to deliver a message about the plight of immigrant parents living in the country illegally. So now you know how the media was able to find out about this little girl so quickly and roll her out and have her read her letter, hear it in her own words. So again, it's all about using the right imagery to push the agenda. And if you're someone who doesn't use the right imagery to push the agenda and you actually try to counter it with some truth news and not propaganda, they're going to come after you and try to shut you down. Now, if you don't think that government agencies are capable of being this big and bad, well, again, I point you to Lois Lerner targeting conservative groups, but here's a story coming out of Seattle. Seattle IRS agent is facing federal charges after soliciting a bribe from a marijuana dispensary owner. So there you go. It's lowest learner, like we say, it trickles down. Now, this incident began when IRS agent Paul G. Hurley was tasked with performing an audit on the dispensary, and he approached the shop owner and demanded $20,000 in exchange for leniency. After the encounter, the business owner immediately contacted federal authorities, who later oversaw multiple meetings and exchanges of cash between the pair. During one of the final meetings, Hurley reportedly told this pot shop owner off the record that he'd saved him more than $1 million despite no tax deductions existing for marijuana dispensaries. So he was doing him a favor, not going to have to pay all these taxes. Just slip me a little something under the table. Now, do you think this is the only time something like this has happened and the only agency where we're seeing this type of activity occur? So it's a good thing that this industry has become legalized in certain areas, because now this dispensary owner could actually go and get some help rather than just being blackmailed and having to, pay off somebody. And of course, we've heard of these things happening in other agencies with crooked cops and other agents of power, if you will. But also, let's point out, with this whole crackdown, it's really easy to be labeled a terrorist now, right? Black Lives Matter. I mean, Black Lives Matter was sort of a darling movement, and now they're being labeled as a terrorist organization, just like Occupy protesters were, or veterans, domestic terrorists. So that's the other thing that's really frightening with this, is if you are a political dissident, to be labeled this way. That's why it's incredibly frightening when you see stories like this one that are coming out of the New York Times. Police program aims to pinpoint those most likely to commit crimes. Now, we've been telling you this for a long time, for years, this predictive policing. This strategy combines elements of traditional policing, like increased attention to crime hotspots and close monitoring of recent parolees, but it often also uses other data, including information about friendships, social media, drug use, and then they use this to identify hot people and aid the authorities for forecasting crime. And we've talked a lot about how here in Austin, Texas, one of the main software creators of something like this that aggregates all of your social media use is now being used by the police here to track people's activity via their social media accounts. So this is going on in many, many agencies. And it's a part of a larger trend by the government and corporations that are increasingly turning to predictive analysis and data mining to look at behaviors. And it's also typically financed by the federal government. So it's all about control and protecting the surveillance state, protecting the establishment and the order that has been set up. They don't want anyone changing the system. And that's why, you're not going to see someone like a Ron Paul get elected to become the president. So, is this going to improve conditions between citizens and the police? It seems like it's going to further justify racial profiling, something like this. Or also, what about guilt by association, because you just so happen to be friends with someone on a social network? Or maybe they are trying to contact you and maybe you're not even speaking with them. But this has all sorts of problems here with this predictive policing. Now, researchers who are working with police to create these algorithms say that they're coming closer than traditional detectives in being able to predict who's apt to break the law. So this includes previous arrests, unemployment, an unstable home life, friends or relatives who have been killed or who are in prison or gangs, and people who have problems with drugs or alcohol. And I'm sorry, but I can think of a lot of people who have those certain situations in their life, by no fault of their own. This is just something that occurs in a lot of people's lives. So there you go. Now, also, if you're an Alex Jones listener, there you go. It's not just Alex Jones that they're wanting to take down, but they're definitely surveilling those who listen to internet radio and talk radio. Now, this is Steve Watson reporting about a spy program out of the UK that is much bigger than anything the NSA has done. British government spied on everyone's web activity and targeted internet radio listeners. This has been going on for the past 7 years. Spies with the GCHQ, which is the British equivalent of the NSA, have been spying on every visible user's internet activity and called the operation Karma Police because they are Radiohead fans. Now, this new revelation comes from the documents provided to The Intercept by Edward Snowden. and GCHQ has referred to this program as the world's biggest internet data mining operation. The document notes that some of the websites specifically targeted for covert cookie collection included Facebook, Microsoft Live, Amazon, YouTube, Reddit, WordPress, Yahoo, Google, YouPorn, and news sites such as Reuters, CNN, and the BBC. So I can think of, I pretty much visit those websites every single day, except for YouPorn. Now, the genesis of the program appears to have been an operation to track individuals listening to internet radio. And of course, here they say that the spies were researching into how radicals could be misusing the internet radio to spread their messages. The Intercept reports that it was mainly looking at radio stations that were broadcasting any spoken recitations from the Quran. But then they point out how other metadata was being swept up that had nothing to do with that. But no doubt the same thing is happening with any of this so-called domestic terrorists that are listening to talk radio as well. So I don't know about you guys, but I think it's time to dismantle Obama's, our global government surveillance state.
President Obama's reign is winding down as a season of potential candidates pounces on the gigantic, unconstitutional eyesore Obama will leave in his wake. Dismantling Obama's Bilderberg agenda handiwork, i.e. his legacy, could potentially take the next leader of the supposed free world their entire term to tear down Obamacare.
If you have or had one of these plans before the Affordable Care Act came into law, and you really liked that plan, what we said was you could keep it if it hasn't changed since the law's passed.
The middle class and sovereign killing Trans-Pacific Partnership, the American citizen targeting N.W.O, and the global ISIS funding infrastructure, to name just a few of the parapets propping up the structure of the established New World Order, thanks in large part to President Barack Hussein Obama. If anyone's still listening in Washington, D.C., I would advise the next president, if we actually get one, rather than another puppet, start small. Start with Obama's Orwellian discrimination database collection of American citizens aiming to target areas where socialist policies can thrive and lead America down the rabbit hole towards totalitarianism. The New York Post reported, this Orwellian-style stockpile of statistics includes a vast and permanent network of discrimination databases, which Obama already is using to make disparate impact cases against banks that don't make enough prime loans to minorities, schools that suspend too many blacks, cities that don't offer enough Section 8 and other low-income housing for minorities, and employers who turn down African Americans for jobs due to criminal backgrounds. Big Brother Barack wants the databases operational before he leaves office, and much of the data in them will be posted online so that civil rights attorneys and urban activist groups will be able to exploit them to show patterns of racial disparities and segregation, even if no other evidence of discrimination exists. Appreciate it, Congress. Your protection of our Bill of Rights is a laughingstock. We are spied on, taxed to death, lied to, and now the Commandeer-in-Chief has spearheaded an Orwellian database to divide us all based on race in the name of racial and economic justice.
Why are some countries different culturally than others? Why do some countries not have resources but are more successful than countries that do have resources? And it goes to the cultural experiences of that people, of that nation. And now we're being absolutely subdivided and destroyed. And it doesn't matter if globalist forces are conquering your country as long as you can racially divide and conquer the public.
Well, I suppose if you really want to divide and conquer a nation, technology can be a powerful tool, but it's pointless to utilize it in this great capitalistic melting pot we call America. You see, Obama, if you really understood our nation and its people, you would be well aware that ideas and opinions aren't as skin deep as you would hope and change.
It's not free speech, man. Nobody's stopping you from free speech, but you can't solicit out here. What are we soliciting? You're soliciting your opinions.
Is it a commodity in any way? Like is speech a commodity?
Well, pamphlets and stuff like that. So that's exactly what it would be.
What are we soliciting?
What's the permit for that we need exactly?
Yeah. Why don't you go talk to Student Life?
Okay.
But you can't do it out here. Otherwise, they're going to lock you up.
John Bound for Infowars.com.
Paul, guess what?
What?
We bugged Mr. Blake's cell and we heard him talking to his lawyer. You see, we took the mic and we hid it up in the cell window.
Wait a minute. What are you talking about?
We bugged Mr. Blake's cell.
You what?
We bugged the cell with Arnold's tape recorder. Just listen to this, Paul.
I can't listen to that.
But, Paul.
Opie, I can't listen to that. I'm not permitted.
But, Paul, you don't understand.
Opie, I can't listen to this. Now, I told you about eavesdropping.
But, Paul, this is different.
Yes, it's worse. You overheard a conversation that was supposed to be private. Now, I can't be a party to that.
But, Paul, if you just listen to this...
Opie, I can't listen.
Paul, you're erasing the tape.
That's what I mean to do. You bugged a conversation between a lawyer and his client. Now, that's violating one of the most sacred rights of privacy.
Introducing Secret 12, the new InfoWars Life vitamin B12 formulation. Now, InfoWarsLife.com is excited to announce that we can bring you our most bioactive, powerful form of B12 that has been developed with our exclusive perfected process. Secret 12 is a binary of nutramedical grade, bioavailable coenzyme forms of B12. Secure your revolutionary Secret 12 formula right now at InfoWarsLife.com or call 888-253-3139.